Oh, please let it be fantastic.
Alright, so welcome to the new west-facing launch on Mt Bakewell. Very exciting. We have a takeoff that faces in a westerly-ish sort of direction. Today the wind was forecast to be kind of west-northwest. At the weather stations in the area it's anywhere between west-northwest and southwest, but it's basically west. So the air is definitely coming from the general direction of out there somewhere and towards here. So this takeoff has a number of innovative features not found at other launches on Mt Bakewell. One of them is this magical green stuff here that they put on paragliding takeoffs all over the world, because it means that you can put your stuff down and set it up without getting it covered in dirt and torn up by the vegetation and the rocks and stuff. So that's definitely a win. We've also got excellent mobile phone coverage because of the towers, and then we have, you lay your wing out back there, you bring your wing up over your head, you feel if it's nice or not, and then provided there's a bit of a breeze like now, it should be a couple of steps and then you're airborne. So if the wind is coming from the left, I would expect to get a bit of rotor and crappy air off these trees. I'd be very cautious about flying here when it was strong and coming from the left. If the wind is coming from the right, actually it doesn't look too bad. It would have to be very cross like north before I got particularly worried about it. A little bit, it's probably going to be a little bit Serpo-ish in that there's a bit of a cliff and a lip in front, and so if there is air travelling over the top of the trees it might shoot up, which means possibly there's going to be a bit of rotor or crappy air back here somewhere, and you might get a bit of a thump coming through. But I would think actually with a paraglider like right now, you pop your wing up and you would probably climb, you'd fly straight out and not lose any height and gain height actually, and you would end up in a position where once you were up above the tree there, even with a bit of a headwind, probably it shouldn't be an issue making the paddock out front if you were going to bomb, but more likely if there's a bit of breeze on the face you should be able to turn left and follow the ridgeline along. And once you get to the edge there, that's a great point because it's pretty steep. So if you're going to bomb, you can bomb crosswind and then just turn into wind once you're clear of the trees down the bottom. That's a nice easy escape route that's not going to need much more than like maybe a 3-to-1 glide. I'm pretty comfortable with that. If you're going straight out into wind, you probably need 4-to-1 glide, I would guess, if I had to guess, from up here to get down to the paddock. Obviously you're never assured of 4-to-1 glide in any aircraft because it depends on the strength of your headwind. On the plus side, if there's a strong wind blowing on here, you should expect there to be ridge lift, so you should stay here on this section that's going to work and not go forwards until you've got the height to either go forwards or go around the corner. If you took off here and then bombed out and you ended up low on your way out the front, I would expect to get crap off the little hills out front. I seriously doubt that you'd be getting good lift, and so I can definitely see one situation, a scenario where you take off here and you go through the gap and you don't get altitude, and then you turn for the paddock, and it's going to be a pretty horrible experience on the way down because you're not going to be going up and your sync alarm is probably going to be going off, and it's probably even going to be a bit turbulent. But with the sun where it is at the moment, heating this face, and the wind bringing thermals onto this face, I really think that it should be reasonable to expect that you can take off here and have enough basic ridge lift to be able to climb. And if you do a couple of beats, you're going to hit a core in no time, and then I would think a couple of turns in that core and you'll be up over the towers and heading in an easterly direction. So there's a windmill right down out front that we can see, which is pointing just slightly to the left of launch. And I've got 3 streamers set up here, and they're all indicating relatively smooth air coming onto the launch. So they're not making huge changes in direction. The wind down there, which is obviously nowhere near where a paraglider wing is going to be, but the wind down there looks reasonably okay. Like if I was in a hang glider and I came through there like at taking off here, I wouldn't expect that I was going to die. So that looks okay. So the streamer over here is actually, it's really behind the trees in front. I would have thought this one here would be copying a bit of rotor and horrible air, but actually it's not showing anything very terrible. So this one over here does show the wind is coming from the right at the moment. It's obviously a thermic day, and I wouldn't totally trust this one anyway because there's a tree directly in front of it. So here the main windsocks that I would use for a no-go sort of thing. This one down here, if this isn't getting clean air, so within 30 degrees of the center of launch, I would not go because something's going wrong. The air should be getting funneled up through here as it is. So right now, I think that looks okay. And then I've got another one over here because we're interested in what's happening on the other side of this launch as well. So the wind on the ground definitely seems to be tending to go over to that side a bit, to the right a bit. So it appears to have some north in it. But again, I mean, if you just hang a windsock like that next to a tree, the air is going to be, assuming it's straight, blowing around the tree and creating an area here which is going to push that out. That's just so the main thing with the 2 on the side is that you don't want to see them going away from you. You don't want to see them going 90 degrees to the right or the left, because those are all indications that the air there is very bad. But if I was back here and all 3 of these were coming towards me like this, I would feel pretty confident about getting out over the top of that tree. And then once I'm over the top of that tree, I think I should have a good enough glide to be able to make the paddock down the front if I was just totally going to bomb. Pretty confident about that. If the wind was so strong that I couldn't penetrate, there would be ridge lift here. So I reckon I'm going to have a go. Alright, so I've been up here observing conditions for a while and getting ready. So the wind is consistently from a westerly sort of direction. You may actually be able to see a dust devil out front just passing us, and it is definitely tracking from right to left. West is just to the right of launch over there somewhere. And the wind on the ground in front of us at the weather stations I can see is generally west-northwest, and behind us and south of us it tends to have more west-southwest in it. The gusts are around 15-20 kilometers an hour on the ground, but it's averaging around 10, just under 10, but it's always a westerly direction. So I definitely wouldn't advocate taking off here in the southwest. Until the white ants kill that tree that's right there, I would be quite concerned about getting rotor off it during the takeoff phase. And with the hang glider, you're concerned as you're taking off, if you get rotor on the left wing, it's going to turn you left, and there just happens to be a tree there which caused the rotor, and so that's bad. And obviously with the paraglider, you lose half your wing, you're going to struggle to maintain a straight direction, and you're going to sink out because of your lost wing area, and that tree again is waiting to catch you. So that tree's just got, but I did see white ants on it, and I'm pretty sure that they'll have killed it before long. So that's all good. So at the moment, if the wind was less than about 15 kilometers an hour prevailing, and that's standing down there on the face, I'd be quite happy to go, because any little crappy air you get off stuff isn't going to be the end of the world. It's just going to be little bumps. It's not going to be big collapses and, you know, death-inducing rotor. Once you get up above 15 kilometers an hour to around 10 knots, that's the point at which the strength of the turbulence becomes a control issue for hang gliders and paragliders, and so I wouldn't take off here then unless it was absolutely bang on from the west. And I'd even be a little bit concerned about very thermic days, because it's definitely really going off out there at the moment. There's one powerful cycle after another coming through. At the height of the cycle, when the thermal's behind you, you have 15 kilometers an hour prevailing, with 15 kilometers an hour from the thermal itself, which is 30 kilometers an hour, which is 15 knots on the face here. And whilst on a hang glider at 15 knots, you could certainly stand down there on the base bar and just jump up straight into it and go, and you'd have a lot of energy and control and everything else. With a paraglider taking off here and going out into potentially a turbulent 15 knots, in my experience, not particularly wise. So yeah, so I've got my 3 streamers, 2 of which I can see from back here, and of course the most important, the third one, I can't, but I can see it from here. So I can pop the wing up and then come forwards to about this point where I can see all 3. And if they all look good and I've got pressure in the wing and it feels nice, then head down a good strong run, and we'll find out whether or not there is lift on this face. So we're playing the when to take off game. I'm definitely not taking off when there's a thermal right on launch or right behind launch, because the wind speed is around 15 knots, and that's not cool. Now, when there's a thermal just in front of launch, it's completely stopping the wind, and so the wind here is pretty much nil. I've got no problem with nil wind takeoff, so I could run and take off and I'd be pretty confident I'd get out. However, I would like to have some wind here so that I can get out above the trees, just because that'll make me feel better about making a glide out front in case it's just a tremendous bomb. So to have a bit of wind on the face, there needs to be a thermal either behind us or in the vicinity. So right now, there is the next thermal is going to come across here, and you can see at the moment the streamers are both indicating that the wind is coming from the left. So it's got some west-southwest roughly direction, and I suspect that's probably more because there's a thermal kicking off somewhere over the back here that's pulling it up that way than anything else. But the thermals are pretty much always going to climb to the top of the hill and then anchor around the towers, and so I would expect the wind here to gradually straighten up as the thermal gets more behind us. So then I'm going to have a nice wind for taking off. And then I am going to turn left and expect that on the sunny face there I'm going to get some lift. And if I don't and I can't follow it around, I'm going to head straight out for the bomb out. I'm definitely not going to go into wind to the right over the low crappy stuff there, because I don't like any of that. I like having my exit path. Once I've flown here a bit and I know the site better, I will have a much better idea of what the smart thing to do is. But right now I'm making a plan that I believe is the best safe plan, and that's the one that I'm going to stick with. So just waiting for all 3 windsocks to straighten up and indicate a gentle breeze, and then I'm going to go see what awaits me out front. Right, so the wind has just straightened up and picked up a bit in strength. And from the shaky trees, I would say that there's definitely a thermal coming through the face here right now. So most likely, if I pop the wing up, I'd take a step or 2 and I'd get lifted straight up into the air. Probably with today's wind strength, I would be penetrating just about slowly, a few kilometers an hour. But given the proximity of the towers there and the number of videos that you can find on the internet of people taking off into strong conditions and then going straight backwards into a tower, I don't want to do that. Also, if you get picked up here and you get taken to what's now my left, to the left of the towers there, you could probably spot land it in a few places, but essentially you're going into tiger country, and you're also likely going into Rhoda or the lee side of the hill. So that would be a very bad place to be. So you don't want to do that. You definitely want to go forwards, and then I think you definitely want to turn left once you are forwards. So that was that. Thermal came through, and it's died a bit in the arse now. There's still a little bit of shaky tree out front, but there's really not much going on. So it is 3:31, so it's late in the afternoon for Bakewell, but not for this face. For this face, because it's directly into the sun, this should keep on working basically until almost sunset. So now the streamers are straighting up again, and there's a bit more wind. There's about 10 to 15 k's of wind on the face. I don't see anything shaking crazy out front, but there's likely another cycle coming. So let's just see what this feels like and what the direction's like. So the direction's pretty good, it feels pretty nice. Let's see if we can execute a successful takeoff. So that was good. Definitely lift, definitely thermic lift. So that's a nice thermal. So that's a bit shaky. So I could have turned in that thermal, and could probably have climbed, but the first time flying here, what I want to know is what's going on with the air, what's going on with my escape routes, and I also think there are, ooh, that's interesting, likely to be other thermals. So let's just see what happens over here. It's nice, whoa, to be able to play on this side of the face a bit. So that's a good climb. Oh yeah, it's a nice strong climb, and so we definitely should be making a bit more effort to turn in something like that. But we can just gently reposition ourselves into it if we can, and see how we feel about turning in it then. So I think it's going to be back here. I think this is where it was going. The trees down here are pretty excited. So there it is. Oh, shaky. Oh, we're out of it again. So feels yeah, based on the trees down there, I think that there is something going on, but I totally, I mean, I know it flew straight through that thermal that was anchored there in the gully, but it's exploring the lift here. So let's, so there are animals in the paddock out front. We're not going to be landing there. Now the wind definitely feels like it's west, a bit of west northwest, and we're not going to land in that paddock there with the animals. We're going to land, well, the one over here's got horses, but horses are less of a problem than cattle, and I believe the farmer is as well. So what we're going to do is we're going to go downwind and we're going to explore. It's possible we'll get lift off this face, it's possible there'll be a thermal here. Definitely something just here. So I wouldn't have thought there'd be enough wind to reach Ridgelaw, to be honest with you, but I guess if the hill is sucking hard enough, then I would expect this whole face to be working. Whoa, shaky! So we definitely got something out of that. So let's keep trying. If there was a thermal, it would have gone over here. See how we feel about. Yeah, I can definitely see some action in the trees here. It's a bit shaky. So this is about the point where if it was kind of west-northwest or northwest, the trees could be shaking because of the angry air spilling around the corner. And to the point at which we might not want to go much further. I'm kind of wondering now what's going on. The trees are pretty shaky, but I really pick it as thermic more than wind. I guess I'll find out when I get down to the ground. So it's cool to be setting up to land in this direction at Bakewell. So let's be very cautious. So let's get ourselves ready for landing. Feet aren't tangled in the speed system. That's great. We want a large open area of paddock in front of us so that we have nice calm winds in case the sea breeze has come in or it is suddenly blowing 15 knots down there. So yeah, that tree down there does look pretty excitable. So we're going to be landing on that track. I reckon. No, we're going to be landing on this middle track. Unless, of course, we're in a thermal. Which case might still get away. No, that's not a happy sound. So let's just make sure that we're positioning ourselves. Whoa. It's surprisingly rough, actually, considering the relatively small amount of wind, and the dam over there doesn't look very excited. I'm surprised how rough the air is. Yeah, look at that. That's science. So yeah, so I'd say on the ground here at the moment we've got maybe 15 kilometers an hour. It's really not very strong, but just above the ground up there, the tree, that's more like 20, and above that it felt, I mean, I wasn't penetrating more than a few kilometers an hour, so there does appear to be wind coming in, and actually there's all this smoke that's just appeared which is coming in. So I reckon what just happened is the sea breeze or something along those lines is pushing in, and the benign northwesterly that we had is mixing with a southwest or a west-southwest and creating a much more interesting environment. So there's something to remember for next time. Look at the horizon for the smoke and pay attention, because conditions can always change. So there we are. So cool. So I got to fly from a new site. I got to Ridgelaw, a little bit of a new hill. I got to land in a westerly direction. What a great day. Now all I need to do is climb back up the hill to my car, and we're all good. So happy days. So that smoke that just appeared on the horizon, I didn't see it before I took off. It wasn't there. I mean, it was off in the far distance, but not close enough to to pick, that is racing in now, and the wind here has been a pretty consistent 15-20 kilometers an hour, but picking up in strength when thermals come through. So definitely now I would not be taking off up there in these conditions. And yeah, very interesting to see what happens next. That's an unlucky flyer. There's a happy little pilot. And there are some flowers up on Bakewell. Who would have thought it? So I'm climbing back up Mt Bakewell at the moment. I guess 15-20 minutes ago I was down the bottom. As you can see, probably from the shaky trees, we're having quite a lot of wind, and the smoke has arrived. It's very smoky. Smoke has passed Mt Bakewell and it's headed east. So yeah, I guess I got the leading edge of this. I was just too late today, but that's no biggie. On a day like today, you'd think that there would be some sort of convergence or something. If you could be up there and waiting for this line, you could, in theory, try and track north and south, I guess, along it and stay in that magic lift. But anyway, climb back up to the car, drive home. Today is done for me. So I thought I'd come back to the takeoff just to see what it's like. So we've got pretty much a sea breezy sort of thing in at the moment, which has brought this smoke. Now, because the prevailing wind is pretty much west or west-northwest anyway, it's going to be a merging of the sea breeze and the prevailing wind, so that's probably why it looks very straight here at the moment. I don't know whether normally it would look that good, but actually right now this looks pretty good. So it's about 20 to 25 kilometers an hour, and for me on a paraglider that isn't really something I would personally enjoy, but then I'm fairly light, and I don't like gale dangling. On a hang glider though, if I had my single surface with me here, I wouldn't hesitate to take off. You would be able to ridge saw this, and judging by all the movement in the trees all the way out front, there's a lot more wind down there than there is just around here, which sort of makes me think either there's a big line of thermals going through, although it's been consistent the whole time I've been watching. It makes me think the air is coming in and probably hitting those first hills and then coming up and then dropping down again somewhere in the middle there, and then coming up fairly cleanly onto this face. It's that, if you imagine a water thing, so if you imagine that we stood up the top of this and with a big bucket of water and poured it down, how that water would flow down the hill and where it would go. And then if you imagine that in reverse, let's be realistic about this, fluid dynamics isn't that easy. But air does behave a lot like a fluid. So anyway, there's some more bullshit for you if you like it. This is very interesting. So right now you could take off here. I think it would obviously be a bit lumpy because it's probably 15 knots out front, but on a hang glider I don't think you'd have control issues. I think taking off from the top on a hang glider, you would be going up and straight out, so you would be quite quickly clear of the shitty air, and you'd want to do that whilst you were in this big area here, which is pretty good for maneuvering, and you should expect to go out over the top of everything. Probably you just let the bar out and pull it in as required to maintain control. So I wouldn't advocate a paraglider flying here unless you have a very high wing loading or you really like gale dangling. Not in these conditions, but a hang glider I would do it myself. And I will bring my hang glider with me next time I'm here and see what this face is like. With a hang glider, there's not going to be any of the angst of am I going to make it out front to a landing place. Even on single surface, from this height you could reef the bar in and you'd be guaranteed to get out somewhere to the paddock out front, because you can always improve your glide ratio by flying faster, whereas in a paraglider you're in the air you're in and there's really not that much you can do. So but I'm getting used to that. Anyway, time to go.